Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Eco Prescription, and we are today arranging our second session of Eco Cafe, named the Green Innovation. And we have with us Kate Wexell, who is the founder and the executive director of the Compass Online. And I want to welcome everyone to our Facebook page and also YouTube channels. So at first, I will take around 3 minutes to give a brief introduction of Eco Prescription, and then I will get the floor over to Kate. So, that's all. And this is Eco Prescription. Eco Prescription is a, sorry. So Eco Prescription is an initiative which was established in 2023 and to develop an environmentally sound system that would empower our children and youth to be the climate advocate. And we are focusing on 3 SDGs actually, SDG 3, SDG 5, and SDG 13 by following our motto where health and nature are converged. So there are some snapshot of our activities, and in our snapshot we have also arranged a workshop in a collaboration with Department of Anthropology, Shahzal University of Science and Technology in Bangladesh, and also FXB USA, where Dr. Natalia Linos was the speaker from Harvard University there. And we were also the official participant of American Anthropological Association this year to arrange some discussion sessions. And till now, from 2023, our achievement is we are the winner of Invest in Women Ideas Challenge in 2024, organized by Save the Children Bangladesh, where we established a top 7 position among the teams for our ideas to empower the young people. And we are also the top 10 finalists of USAID Youth Wellbeing Prize competition this year. And we will also join the World Water Forum in 2024 in Bali, Indonesia this year as a youth panelist. And our 2024 goal is to plant 3,000 trees all over Bangladesh, and we will also working on to developing a eco-mobile games. And we are also working on a climate focused comic book for children. And most importantly, for the environmental education for the young people. And as a part of this activity, we are launching a 12-week climate chat series. And this is the second session of our series. And it's called Green Innovation. And the beautiful Kate Wexell is with us today, and the founder and director of the Compass Online. And that's all. Now enjoy our discussion, and thank you so much. So Kate, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on. I really appreciate speaking with you today. So just a little bit about the Compass Online. So I started this organization about 3 years ago. And I think that really where we can pull in the innovation part of it is that I have gone through several different iterations of this. So when you're creating any type of organization, of course, you have to think of what is a good idea. What do you think people want? But then every entrepreneur knows that the initial creation that you first develop is not usually what the public wants. So you have to keep on changing it until you can sort of find where is that good fit. So the Compass Online actually originally started as a platform that was meant more to inform people about different cultures. I had been writing for this sort of online literary magazine / news desk. And so they were doing more of interviews about people's different culture stories. But I wanted to have more informational articles about, okay, what are the actual cultures in different countries that we're talking about? So the Compass Online, it was originally little snapshots of every single country in the world, all of the major world religions, and then just other information, articles, literary magazines that were all focused around culture. However, as time went on and I ended up registering the Compass Online as a nonprofit here in the United States, I realized that a better focus would be, all right, we know this about history, we know this about cultures, and now how can we bring ourselves together to solve global issues? And then to me, at least, I think that the biggest global issue that we are facing right now is climate change. So our latest iteration of the organization now features different online courses, and we're trying to implement active learning. Hopefully in the future, we will develop our courses so that they can be in a mobile app format, and also use more AI technology. But our very first pilot course in this new iteration is about sustainable development goals and how can you actually build your own local action project. And then within the organization, you can now learn about these topics. Then you can take it a step farther to use our AI chatbot that will help you identify local relevant volunteering opportunities that actually match your skill set. There are so many different services out there that they will let you create some filters, but this, all you have to do is type in a few brief answers to some prompts, and it'll actually just spit out like 5 different volunteering opportunities that exactly match your criteria. And then once you have volunteered, or if you've chosen to create your own project in your community that addresses a problem, then you can actually share it in our online forum.
Oh, that's great actually. Like you are working on for the climate change to combating and using technologies here. So can you know more brief about how you started the Compass Online and till now what you have achieved?
Yeah, of course. So as I said, I had been writing for another organization and I just didn't like how that was going. They ended up going more on the side of just interviews with people and creative writing, and I wanted that informational side. So I just decided one day, you know what, I'm going to create this organization. So it was really self-motivated. I developed a Wix website, and that was really great because I created the organization when I was 16. So I had made, I think, 1 or 2 websites before on WordPress. This really tested my skills of like, all right, how can I improve on my graphic design abilities? And then it required a lot of research to create the different educational modules about different countries and about world religions, different things like that. And so then after that, within the first few months, I did start to onboard volunteers from around the world. So we've had a lot of people over the years volunteer from Africa and from Asia. And then, so to this date, we had, I think, over 50 different educational modules in past iterations. We had 6 editions of a global literary magazine, and so people had submitted to that from over 10 different countries. And then our educational materials have reached over 18,000 people in over 75 different countries. We, in the past, did some actual projects that were on the ground, partnered with some organizations. So we had a menstrual health project that was able to provide over 50 women in Kenya and Tanzania with feminine hygiene products for at least a year. And then we had partnered with some schools in Nigeria. So I believe that it was about 3,000 university students were reached with some materials about both sustainable development goals and climate change. And then also they were reached with information about like how to create a LinkedIn, how to get engaged in a more professional capacity once they've actually developed these projects, so that it doesn't all go to waste and people can see like what are the amazing things that they've accomplished. And then we have been featured by G20 India. We gave a panel discussion this past summer, and then by the Clinton Foundation. Oh, you're muted.
So actually, like you were working some of the continents based on the health, and I personally, I am also interested in working in the medical anthropology sector, where I'm also focusing on the sexual and reproductive health and rights. So it's a kind of inspiring for me, or inspiration for me. Like you are also working on health sector. So like, could you please say about the specific project or initiative in your organization, like you are currently working to address the climate change on the Compass Online?
Yes, so within climate change, we are trying to develop some more courses. So I guess I said we already have a pilot course that is about sustainable development goals. So if people take the course, that will actually walk them through like what is the United Nations, what are global issues, what are all of the different sustainable development goals, under the plan for 2030. And then it will walk people through how can they actually create their own project. So then this has actually been shared as well with some of our partner schools in Nigeria who are working to educate people about climate change. So it allows them to sort of take things a step further. And then through our climate change education tour that was happening in Nigeria this past year, there were, I believe, 1,000 trees that were planted through these initiatives. So it would be the children and students in Nigeria, they learn about what is going on with climate change, because a lot of them are not even told ever in their educational experience, like what climate change is. And then they would be given usually the ability to plant a tree and actually put that into practice. So that is still ongoing a little bit. It's just in sort of a different capacity now. But then in the future, we are planning to create more courses about environmental ethics, investing in climate finance, and different things like that.
Oh, great, actually. Like you have already mentioned, you are working on some Africa's region, and yeah, so my next question will be like, what role do you see like about the grassroots movements playing in the fight against the climate change, and how does your organization engage with them?
Yeah. So I think that my perspective on this has changed a little bit in the past year because I moved to San Francisco back in August. And so now it's been a lot more apparent to me just how large of a role corporations have in sustainability. So I definitely think that they have probably a larger role to play in the actual reduction of carbon emissions. However, in local communities, you still have to have that support so that people understand what's going on and it's easier to actually implement some of these solutions. So that's sort of where the grassroots action takes place. And especially in regions where there isn't sort of that impact from larger entities like intergovernmental bodies or corporations, that's especially important for just the general population to support climate action. So within, or I guess, what was the second part of your question? Could you repeat that again?
Actually, like, how does your organization engage with them was my second part, like about the grassroots
Oh,
movement, or how can an individual can involve himself or herself in your work, like from the grassroots levels or the community levels.
mhm. Okay. Yeah, so a lot of our on the ground work has been in Africa with a lot of our partner organizations in Nigeria, Kenya, and Tanzania. Um, so what we've done there is mainly just with those climate change education programs that I talked about. So the climate change education tour was mainly the big part. Uh, and the interesting thing with that, and this was very, very different from the context in the United States, is I thought being an American, like, oh, you can just reach out to schools there and just ask them, oh, send your students this online course and they'll take it. And you can just come in and present whenever you want. And I found out that is not how education in Nigeria works at all. And a lot of kids don't even go to school, or it's really difficult to convince them to go to school. It's difficult to get in contact with the administrators. Not a lot of people have access to email. So you actually have to like go through government systems to even schedule a meeting at these schools. And then you have to like go in person, and it's a whole big ordeal. And that type of education is really only effective if you're doing it in person. So that's why we have those partners that are on the ground. I think that that's been very effective whenever we've done it. It just is a lengthy process to actually get those types of approval. But how other people can use our platform now is I think that the AI chatbot and the ability to share projects is really useful. We're trying to directly encourage people to actually take action in their communities, not just because it's helping out their community and you understand your own local context better than anybody else, but also because it provides you with all of these different skills, like creating something of your own That's going to teach you management, it's going to teach you finance, it's going to teach you all of these problem-solving skills, recruiting, how to communicate with other people. And that's going to be valuable for people if they do go on to, say, a larger company, and now they can be a better leader within that to create even larger change through organizations that maybe have more power. So the way that we're trying to impact that local action is by inspiring people to volunteer and get involved through the chatbot that will match people up. And then also the concept with our forum page is that you can share your project. And so then other people can either join in as a volunteer or they can become inspired by the solution that you came up with, right? Because even though every place in the world is different, we're all still humans. And especially with large things like climate change, there are a lot of natural disasters that occur that are the same in different places, even if you're on the other side of the
Oh, absolutely. I am also working in the community level, and when I work, I face some challenges to add the people in a work or in some research work. So we have already some kind of challenges to do some work or project against the climate change actually. And as you know, like already COP28 or all the things, they are also focusing on this thing to address the grassroots community. So my next question will be, or inquiry will be, as you say, like, what are the challenges you faced, or could you please share any story like you faced any challenges here and you had to mitigate it for your project implementation?
world. So I think that with our on the ground projects, we've not really had many issues. I would say that probably the largest issues have just been like a lack of understanding from the American side, because I have had volunteers that have been with me here in the United States. And there are a lot of assumptions that are made by the Western world, specifically about places in Africa and Asia, that end up not being true. Um, and then sometimes the way that we're taught to think about problems here is not necessarily effective. So I guess I'll give an example, like with our menstrual health project. Some of the people who had initially been working on that with me from the American side, we had tried to, do the research, make sure that this was actually a problem. And because it's difficult to actually conduct interviews with people out there, like people aren't going to just hop online and take a survey out in rural Kenya, where people don't usually even have computers to begin with. Like it would have to be that somebody would need to know the specific tribal language from the group that we were working with, and then give them a verbal survey and then translate it for any research to be conducted. So it was like one study that we were able to find from the University of Chicago that pretty much said our results are inconclusive about whether or not this is actually a problem. So the other people working with me were like, oh, we need to just completely dismiss this as an idea. Then I was like, no, I talked to somebody from National Geographic who has actually gone out and lived with these people, who is able to say this is a problem. And not that anecdotal evidence is always the best, but we were able then to connect with some organizations that were already out there and talk to them. And they were like, oh, yeah, no, this is actually a massive problem. Like, the women here don't even know what their periods are. Some of their husbands are beating them for even being on their period because nobody understands what it is. They don't have any products whatsoever. And it's like an entire cultural stigma. And of course, this is a very, very small subset of Kenya. That is definitely not like the general population of Kenya. It would be like the equivalent of like people living in Appalachia in the United States. I don't know if that means anything to you. But yeah, like a very, very small section of people, but it was a large problem to them. So there have been little challenges like that, and sort of cultural misunderstandings or assumptions. And then the other thing has mainly just been with funding. And I think that that's a problem for all nonprofits, for all organizations trying to start up. And I think that that's definitely a lot easier to acquire funding, the larger that you are, and if you are a for-profit business. So trying to get things off the ground otherwise is absolutely a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the cultural stigma or cultural taboo
Mhm.
is most one of the biggest trouble for any kind of research or any kind of project implementation, and especially for in the Asian context or the South Asian context, specifically in Bangladesh or other countries, we are also facing some kind of problem when we work for the sexual and reproductive health rights and this sector specifically in the public health. So great, actually. And like I want to know right now, like, how does your organization advocate for policy changes to address the climate change at any local, national, or the global levels? Could you please share with me?
So we are actually not allowed to, and that's based on US laws and regulations. So you have to have like a specific type of designation as an organization to be able to lobby at all. So I found that out because initially I did want to use the organization to lobby for environmental issues. I had a plastic bag initiative that was going on for a little while. Until I learned after working at an actual like environmental policy and lobbying organization that like that is one of their primary purposes, that you have to have a different type of designation.
Yeah, great. And like our conversation will not be that kind of long, like, and right now I want to say about, could you please share some upcoming events or the campaign of the Compass Online, or you are planning to do, so that the people can be aware to be engaged with your organization or can support by some works?
Yeah, so right now there are a lot of discussions about how people can become ambassadors on the ground to organize people for projects. So we're still trying to work out what would that look like. Would that look like people going to schools and doing presentations there? Would it just look like people organizing others to complete projects on the ground? So that's definitely a conversation. We will be represented by one of our volunteers up at COP29 this fall. So that's really exciting. And there will be more information coming out about that. But then the other things that we're doing are releasing a few more courses here in the next 2 months or so. So we're really just trying to pilot and see how effective are these courses? Are people actually interested in this? And then we've been thinking about how can we transform these curriculums so that people can either take them online and have potentially a larger reach, or one thing that people have said that there is a need for is actually adapting the curriculums so that teachers in other countries can just like actually teach it to the students and already have the activities planned out. And so then they can utilize some of this content in person and not have to use a computer or anything like that, especially with how bad internet access is in so many places. I mean, I'm even here where Google headquarters are like right down the street and I don't even have internet access sometimes in my own apartment. Like it's a real issue. So if it's an issue here in the United States, like it's definitely an issue other places as well. But yeah, we will be coming out with some more environmental courses, but then also we will have like a career preparation course, because one of the needs that we've seen is that people working in the climate space, especially if they're volunteering, and particularly in Africa, this is where we've been told the need is. A lot of people are very, very strong, passionate activists. Then there's not a good way for them to translate that into actually making money, which we all still need money to live. So we're going to try to help people with that. We are coming out very soon with a menstrual health course. And then hopefully talking about some sustainability elements within that, like how can you use more sustainable products? And then also a cultural writing course that's not necessarily related to climate change, but part of the organization is we want the people designing the curriculum to actually be invested in what they're talking about. So we are trying to provide some more content that is just unique topics that you wouldn't necessarily find from other organizations creating online courses. Right. So we're testing a couple of things out. Yeah.
That's great. And actually, like for the cultural conception, like we should work on this so that all the continents or all the people can accept this easily. So actually, I already got a question for you from our social media. Like,
Oh, really?
yeah. And one of the participant is saying that from the starting of an organization, like how can we secure or apply for any kind of funding?
Okay, so it really depends. I think that I've written about this on LinkedIn, but there are a couple of different ways to acquire funding. It's either through private donors and individuals applying for grants through a government or through a foundation or soliciting corporate funds. Those are really the four routes. So what I have found to be the least effective is applying for government funding. First of all, everybody wants to partner with US organizations because we have access to US government funding, but that does not actually mean that it's easy for us to get the US government funding. Uh, there is a lot of money, but there are also a lot of people in the United States and a lot of large projects that go on. And so small organizations are not getting the US government funding. Nor do I think that organizations would actually want to be bound by all of the restrictions of government grants. So what I would recommend is try to just look up different foundations. And so find ones that are maybe slightly smaller or start off with like little micro grants. Like be realistic, especially if you're creating a nonprofit or just like a local community organization. Like what are your actual funding needs? A lot of this can be done through volunteer work at the beginning. You probably aren't needing the same amount as if you were creating a for-profit business, right? So I would say like actually just send cold emails instead of going through the application process, unless it specifically designates that you really need to go through the application process. And you need to be very clear about like, here is the exact mission of our organization. And then if you already have an impact, like everything should be quantifiable that you're doing. You need to be very clear with your logic and be able to prove that it will genuinely affect people in the way that you're saying that it will. So yeah, if you've already done things and you're applying for funding, you can say, here's what has happened. If you are just starting off though, you need to have that airtight logic. Like imagine that you're pitching an actual for-profit company. And then same thing with private donors. So that's what I've seen to be the most effective for nonprofits. A lot of nonprofits are usually able to get a solid amount of funding when they're starting off from private donors. And that's the same thing. You want to find people on LinkedIn, just cold message them, say, hey, can I chat with you? Like, don't ever message them saying, I want $5,000 from my organization. Just message them and be like, hey, I would like to know your opinion about this idea that I have for an organization or a project or something like that. Would you be willing to speak to me about it? And then at the end of the conversation, if they seem interested, then you can say, hey, we really would like to set up Google Workspace so that we can all collaborate together and have customizable emails. And that costs $500 a year. Would you be willing to donate $500? Like that's usually how the process works. That's how people at large nonprofits that their job is philanthropy do it. So yeah, that was probably a long explanation, but I've been looking into
No,
this a lot recently.
it's a good explanation actually. Like from the beginning, I was also suffered for this kind of problems, like for the funding at the eco prescription. And that's all this. And this is my last question. And I want to say, like, do you have any messages for the youth, like how they can start a organization or youth initiative to work for the any kind of like climate change or any SDG goals? Like, how can they start?
Well, I would say, first of all, people should take the course that walks them through exactly how to do this. um, but no, how that process works is you need to think of it as if it's a business, but with the goal in mind, not being profit, but being the mission of what you're doing. So in this case, it would be solving climate change. Um, then after that, you really need to carve out what is my exact mission? How am I going to affect people to solve this problem? Always keep the problem in mind. And then if we're talking about the actual logistics of starting up an organization, if it's a nonprofit, then you do need to register it. with whatever your government entity is, that usually costs a little bit of money and you have to go through a lot of paperwork. They need to have all of the necessary things set up, like emails, Google Drives, where you can collaborate on different things with people, set up a social media. And so some of those first volunteers that you have should be people who can help you build a website, who can help you build a social media, who can help you edit videos, and just put out content saying, here's what we're doing, because you don't necessarily have a product with a project or a nonprofit, right? A lot of it is usually more theoretical and like trying to get people engaged with your idea. Make sure that everything is measurable and that you can quantify it, because if you cannot quantify what your organization is planning to do, then you will never get any funding to do it.
Right, absolutely, and it's a big message for the beginners actually, like who want to work as an organization or to build up a team for any kind of initiatives. So thank you, Kate, and thank you the viewers for joining with us. And that's all. We'll come back soon with another session of Eco Cafe. And most importantly, we are also recruiting some training facilitators in the Sylhet City, Bangladesh, for some kind of environmental projects from Eco Prescription. So do follow our page for the updates. And thank you for joining. Good night.